I'm glad that Ambassador...
Could I jump in here? Because,
sure.
Again, the clock is ticking, and that leads to a question about this monstrous federal deficit. Mm-hmm. Is it a problem? Is it a threat to the future of America's children, or is it not a problem? Senator Obama?
I think it's an enormous problem.
And what are you going to do specifically to cut it or to raise, either to stop spending or to raise revenues?
I think it is an enormous problem. This has been the most fiscally irresponsible administration in certainly my memory. We have gone from trillion-dollar surpluses to trillion-dollar deficits in the blink of an eye. Not all of those costs are the fault of the administration. Obviously, 9/11 occurred and the decline in the economy. But what is also true is that it was aided and abetted by a set of fiscal policies that I think were on the wrong course. We can take a look example of yesterday's vote.
For the first 42 presidents, number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome, so that we now have over $9 trillion of debt that we are going to have to pay back. $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
$1 trillion, that's a big number. By the way, $1 trillion, Jenna, is $1 million. So there are a lot of zeros. 12 zeros in a trillion. 13 zeros and 10 trillion. Enormous numbers, and it's so depressing because they can't even get the first $1 trillion of cut. Watching it, you know who else is watching this, Jenna, is investors around the world who invest in things like our Treasury bills. As you just said, we have 15 trillion of them outstanding. And you know, this doesn't send a very confident message to the rest of the world that we can't get our act together. I think both Republicans and Democrats are at fault here. The president, unfortunately, has been kind of absent without leadership. He hasn't even been involved in these negotiations, even though he created the super committee in the first place.
Meanwhile, President Obama is about to leave for a 17-day trip to Hawaii.
Oh, do you blame him?
Yeah, this is Occupy Oahu, for heaven's sake. And during that 17 days, our national debt goes up $70 billion.
And the problem for him, the president is, he is the most strident, I think, on his greatest failure. For the president to lecture Republicans, particularly Paul Ryan, on leadership and responsibility on issues, on fiscal issues and entitlement reform and budgets, when he can't, as you asked Jay Carney about in your interview earlier, he can't even gently nudge Senate Democrats to pass a budget with 51 votes, which they could do tomorrow if there were the political will. The president hasn't been serious about this since the beginning of his presidency.
Obama and the Senate Democrats have proposed nothing. Look, the former CBO director, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, points out that average spending for the federal government over the last 50 years has been slightly over 20% of the economy every year. What is the average spending in the Ryan budget over the next decade? Exactly that, slightly over 20%. Obama is the one who's been radical. The 25% of the economy that he's spending out of Washington is the highest since the Second World War. He's the one who's been radical with trillion-dollar deficits. We've never had one in American history. He's now had 4 in a row. He's now increased our debt by $5 trillion in one term. Radical, unprecedented. That is radical.
If you look at what the president will have done by the end of his first term, from inauguration to the end of his first term, he will, in all likelihood, have increased the debt, the national debt, by the same as all of the previous presidents to this point. That is radical.